Well, hello again, friends, and welcome back to Roll Call. And I will dispense with the usual introduction and instead replace it with this statement. We are going to today focus on some of what can be learned from Operation Midnight Hammer, the military operation that targeted three of Iran's nuclear sites just a week ago. And I mention this because so often when we talk military things, some of our audience tunes out just a little bit. Oh, I don't like military stuff. I'm not into that. We're not a military organization. And that's unfortunate because there's so much that we can learn from it. So if talking about military things you find somewhat tough, I'd ask you to kind of work through that today because I think it's important. There's great stuff that we can learn from this operation, and I'm going to try to summarize in short order a few of those things today. And it starts with one of the main lessons that we can extract from this operation is the importance of planning. Is the importance of planning with intent. It's the importance of planning, then testing, rehearsing, learning, replanning in order to execute well. And in order to highlight this, I'm going to pull directly from General Dan Raising Cane's press conference from just a few days ago. I downloaded this off the Department of Defense website, and there's a few things that he said in his remarks that I think are really useful to us in business. This first reading is going to be a little bit long, so hang with me. Fascinating stuff here, okay? Really, and we're listening with the intent towards understanding how important it is to plan with intentionality. So, General Kane's words, I quote, in 2009, a Defense Threat Reduction Agency officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordo, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in, and every piece of equipment going out. They literally dreamed about this target at night when they slept. They thought about it driving back and forth to work, and they knew from the very first days what this target was for. Now, they weren't able to discuss this with their family, their wives, their kids, their friends, but they just kept grinding it out. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target, so they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU 57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets for a single purpose: kill this target at the time and place of our nation's choosing. Good, and then one day that call came. Interesting. Pause right there. General Kane highlights, and in fact, I'm stunned by how much he shared with the world, but I'm glad that he did. What he specifically talked about and highlighted was how intentionally that team, the one that executed Operation Midnight Hammer, how intentionally they planned, studied, figured out what it would take to achieve mission success, and how much effort they placed in doing so. And when it came to doing so, they went back and they went and evaluated, they learned, they revisited, they tweaked, they went back out there and tested, learned some more, revisited and tweaked. And they did so without any knowledge about whether or not any of this work would ever come to see the light of day. And as he put it, they just kept on grinding it out. Interestingly, one of those days, the call came in. General Kane goes on to say, quote, "Yesterday I had the incredible honor and privilege of spending time with these two Defense Threat Reduction Agency officers who've given so much. One of them said, quote, 'I can't even get my head around this. My heart is so filled with the pride of being part of this team. I am so honored to be a part of this.'" Now, regardless of what you think about the attack, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, we have to acknowledge how brilliant the planning was that led to mission success here. And we have to possibly contrast the degree to which they plan that mission with the way that we plan ours. And I would come back to a frequently stated self-limiting belief that I've noticed in the business world. Well, the military has the resources, the time to go forth and do all of these things. We don't, and there's no time, and da 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 da. It comes down to everybody's resource constrained. Even our military is. But for the things that are really important, they're going to devote the time, attention, resources to make sure that they plan effectively. And the question that we've got to ask ourselves in business is, why don't we? And what I will tell you, having now led all kinds of planning instruction over the course of the last 7 years, what we do in business, the intentionality, the rigor with which we plan is far removed from where it ought to be, where it certainly should be. And that's on us as leaders. We're tolerating that, and in many cases, we're doing so unwittingly. We've never seen what real planning looks like, and so we just don't know how far away we are from where we could be. But that's on us. So just Operation Midnight Hammer teaches us the importance of intentional planning. Not a new message, by the way, here in the roll call world. Good. Now let's talk about who led the operation. And again, we're going to pull from General Kane's statements. Quote, "Let me now turn to the bomber crews themselves, give you a few details about them. The crews that attacked Fordo were from the Active Duty Air Force and the Missouri Air National Guard. The crews ranked from captain to colonel, and most were graduates of the Air Force Weapons School, headquartered at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada." Now, I'll pause right there, highlight most were weapons school graduates. I also must make mention of, and many of you who have seen me in my workshops, in the Top Gun Teamwork Program, wherever, you know that I usually criticize the Top Gun movies for two things. One of which General Kane also criticizes them for by saying, and I quote, "I will state for the record that there is no beach volleyball or football at the Air Force Weapons School." Thank you, General Kane. All right, we'll pause right there. Why do I emphasize General Kane's point about the composition of the crews that led this thing? Answer is, we're very intentional in the military about pouring into those who we expect to execute with absolute precision, absolute excellence. And we pour into them to equip them with the ability to rise to the occasion and to deliver when the nation needs them to. And so we've built a weapons school. We did so in the Air Force starting in 1949, the Aerial Gunnery School. That's the origin to this entire approach that we know from the movie world, Top Gun movie, that's designed to pour into the top 2% of our nation's aviators and make them substantially better. So we've taken the best we've got, we've poured into them, we've given them a PhD level education in tactical leadership, and we've also really tested their mettle and asked them to perform exceptionally well in really trying circumstances so that they've got that experience that they can use then when the nation asks them to go down range and execute. And it was not surprising at all that General Kane highlighted that most of the crews were weapons school graduates. Now, he only focused on the B-2 crews, and we know that there were 125 airplanes involved in this particular operation. My guess is that the F-22s and the F-18s that went into harm's way were also piloted by and crewed by weapons school graduates. And I don't say that just because I'm proud of them and the work that we do there. It's because here's the lesson for us in the world of business. High performance military teams are very intentional about how they go about building leaders, about building the capacity of the leaders to go in and execute with precision and excellence when the entire world is watching. Question for us in business is, why don't we do the same thing? Usually we give into the self-limiting belief of, hey, there's no time, we don't have resources for that, there's no budget for this thing, we've got other things to worry about. But I got to ask, is that the right way to go forth? And sometimes what I've noticed is we got some sort of scattered approach to leadership development. We invest in sending people to a presentation here, a course there, but there's no intentionality about it. And we have to ask ourselves, how effective is it? And when we're not doing it, who's leading? And many times we have to acknowledge that it's the tactical expert who, when a leadership position presents itself, we've got this leadership need. We just promote the tactician into the leadership position and hope they figure it out. Not the best strategy. So, what can we pull from Operation Midnight Hammer? We do need to build the leadership capacity of those who we're demanding excellence from in execution. And if we're not doing that, that's a leadership problem. Good. Final thing that I'd like to highlight from General Kane's statement, and it's about what those aircrew were willing to give in order to achieve mission success. From General Kane's statement, quote, "One last story about people. When the crews went to work on Friday, they kissed their loved ones goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be home. Late on Saturday night, their families became aware of what was happening." We'll pause right there. And I want you to think about this. The aircrew knew exactly what was going on, but they also knew that they could not speak a word about it, because if they had any chance of getting home safely, the operational security tied to this mission had to be 100% airtight. Nobody could leak a thing. So they had to carry this secret, which is a huge burden to carry, with them as they said goodbye and they went to work. And this is a really interesting combat scenario because the B-2 crews left their homes, said goodbye to their families, which is not the typical combat scenario, drove their cars to the base where they trained and mission rehearsed on a daily basis. That's a really weird way to go into a combat setting. And then they flew for 18 some odd hours into harm's way without speaking a word about any of it. But they knew that as soon as either the air defenses were activated or the bomb started to drop, that the rest of the world would awaken to what was happening. And included in the rest of the world were their families. And those families who knew that this was part of the equation, this was one of the things, one of the risks to being a family member in this environment, they suddenly realized what mom or dad was doing. And they started praying. We continue from General Kane. "And on Sunday, when those jets returned to Whiteman, their families were there, flags flying and tears flowing. I have chills literally talking about this." Good. So the beauty of the situation of taking off from Whiteman, going into harm's way, and then getting a chance to come all the way back home is, if it goes well, you get to celebrate with your family. And what a beautiful thing to be able to do for everybody involved. Good. So for us in the world of business, got to ask ourselves, do our teammates have the same passion and commitment to what we're doing here as those aircrew did? And if you write this one off as, well, Cujo, there's no way. I mean, this is a business, it's a for-profit enterprise, whatever. What we're doing is not really that important. And of course not, Cujo. It's not life or death. We're not saving the world. Of course, they're not going to have that same level of commitment. You're again giving into a nasty self-limiting belief. Go watch any of the roll calls that we've done on the importance of identifying purpose in what we do. Go watch any of the things that Simon Sinek and his team have been talking about for so long now, about finding our why. Go study Google's Project Aristotle. Understand that the best teams, they know the meaning that is tied to the work that they do, and they understand the impact that they make in doing it. And as such, they're committed to doing it. And if we aren't at the level where our teammates get the meaning and the impact of the work we're doing, either we don't have the right teammates, and that's a leadership deficiency, or we haven't discovered our purpose, which is also a leadership deficiency. And so And so maybe there's an opportunity here to address those deficiencies if they exist. Why? So that we can be a little bit like the force that executed Operation Midnight Hammer. And this is how I'll close out today. More words from General Kane, who, by the way, in case you don't know much about him, 1999 graduate of the Air Force Weapons School in the F-16 Division. He said, "That, my friends, is what America's Joint Force does. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we test, we evaluate every single day. And when the call comes to deliver, we do so." Thank you, General Kane. Now, here's the question for us in the world of business. When the call comes in to execute, do we have the right team out there ready to execute? Do they have a plan that's intentional, that's designed and equipped to give the team confidence that we're going to go out there and execute? Do we have the leadership capacity to execute that plan with precision? And do our teammates care so much about what they're doing that they're going to do it excellently always? And if not, whose fault is that? And if not, what are we going to do about that? Great reflections. Great reflections pulled from a little bit of discussion about Operation Midnight Hammer. And it's equally relevant regardless of your political thoughts, regardless of what country you live in, regardless of whether or not you believe that that mission was warranted. Still much to learn from it. And hopefully we're doing so. And as you go forth and you go into this weekend and you consider what it is that you're going to do differently about leadership next week, realize this: all of us here at Team VMAX Group are rooting for you. And we want you to keep on leading them well and keep winning. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next roll call.